So every now and then I'll get a comment asking me if I can do a breakdown of how I color grade my YouTube videos. So that's what we're going to be doing in this one. Now keep in mind this isn't the exact way that I color grade every single project. What I'm going to show you applies specifically to these talking head style videos that I do for the channel, but when it comes to some of my other filmmaking projects, things look a little bit different, so maybe that's something that I can cover in another video down the line. Now, I know some people are gonna ask what camera and color profile I use when filming, so I want to quickly talk about that. As of the time of recording this, the camera that I've been using for the majority of the stuff on this channel is my Sony a6400, and the color profile I use 99% of the time is S-Log2 with the S-Gamut 3.Cine color space. Back in the day, I used HLG2 for a few of my videos, but I moved over to S-Log2 because I feel like it gives me slightly more control when I'm grading my footage. That being said, I still occasionally use HLG2 for projects that have a super quick turnaround time, or if I'm not gonna be the one editing the footage and the client asks me for it. Either way, regardless of which of the two color profiles I use, my grading workflow for these YouTube videos looks almost exactly the same, with one small difference. If I'm using HLG2, I don't have to convert my footage to Rec. 709, and with the S-Log footage I do, but that's pretty simple, so it's kind of whatever. Now, something else I want to briefly talk about is the fact that I try to film with the color grade in mind. And what I mean by that is I expose pretty much all of my videos to be a bit brighter in camera than I want them to look later in the final thing. I know that there are a ton of tutorials out there all claiming to teach you the absolute best way to expose S-Log, but honestly, for real world use, I try not to care too much about any of them, so I don't focus super hard on like exposing to a plus 1.3 or some specific zebra value or whatever. As long as I make my clips a bit brighter than I think they should be, I'm able to get a good looking result pretty much all of the time. Plus, there's one specific step in my color grading workflow that kind of helps me to do that, and I'll talk about that in a second. So the main thing I always try to do when color grading, whether it's for YouTube or any of my other filmmaking work, is to try and keep things as simple as possible and only as complicated as they need to be. Some of you might be used to pro colorists making videos where they show you a node tree that has like 30 nodes, but I'm not like that. I try my absolute hardest to not overcomplicate things. Obviously, there are projects that need that sort of thing, but most of mine don't, at least not right now. Now, something I do before I actually start color grading is grouping all of the clips that are gonna have the same grade. After I cut down my footage, I'll select all of the talking head clips by either clicking on the first one and hitting Ctrl A, or selecting the first one and then holding down Shift and clicking the last one. Then I right click on any of them and go to add to new group, and I'll usually name it something along the lines of talking head. Then I go to the drop down menu at the top and click on group post clip. This basically means that any changes I make to the grade are gonna apply to every single clip in the group. It's pretty much like using an adjustment layer above your footage in Premiere, and I do this because these videos are all filmed in a controlled environment where the lighting doesn't change, so it doesn't really make sense for me to grade each clip on its own. Now, the first thing I do when color grading is converting my S-Log2 footage to Rec. 709, and there are two easy ways that you can do that. The first one is by using a color space transform effect that you can drop on your node, and then you select the color profile that you were using to film. This works pretty well, but I actually do something else instead. I prefer using phantom LUTs to convert my footage. I'm not gonna go into what phantom LUTs are in this video, but I will have a link to the website that they're on in the description, where you can read all about what they do and you can pick them up if you want. The reason I prefer these over the standard CST method is because they usually give me starting colors that look a bit more pleasing. They also handle different types of exposure really well, which is why earlier I said that I don't care too much about any specific technique for exposing S-Log. Again, this isn't a video specifically about phantom LUTs, so you can go and read about them for yourself, but I might make a video focused around them down the line. So after I've gotten my footage to look somewhat normal, I'll hit Shift S twice to make 2 more nodes before the conversion one. I do this because I want to have access to as much of the information in my clip as possible before it's converted to Rec. 709. In the first one, I'll usually fix any white balance issues that I notice, and I do this by looking at the vector scope and using the offset wheel, and that's a technique that I've talked about in another video before. After that, in the second node, I'll pull the offset down to make things a bit darker, and this is pretty much why earlier I said that I film everything to be brighter. This way, I get my image to have a bit more contrast and look moodier, which is something that I like, and at the same time, I make sure that there's not too much noise in the dark parts of the frame. After that, I'll click on the conversion node, and this time I'll hit Alt-S to make another one after it. This one I use for my HSL adjustments, which in the case of these YouTube talking head videos are mainly for making sure that my skin tone looks right. I'll go to the curves panel, and under the hue versus hue tab, I'll make a few points around where the orange hues sit, and then I'll drop one in between those because that's usually where people's skin tones are. Then I'll move the middle point around just a bit until I think my skin looks natural. Obviously, natural is gonna mean different things for different people's skin tones. And that's pretty much it. Most of the talking head videos on this channel follow this exact same 4-node color grading setup. I've also turned this color grade into a power grade to be able to use it on any future YouTube video and save myself time from doing this exact same process every time. This way, I'm essentially able to just drag and drop the grade anytime I make something for the channel, and only make small changes to each node if I really need to. Yeah, so hopefully you were able to learn something in this video. If you've got any questions about any of the stuff that we talked about, make sure to drop them in the comments below and I'll do my best to try and answer them. Also, here's another video with some more color grading tips that you might find useful. As always, thank you for watching until the end because I genuinely appreciate it, and I'll see you in the next one.